All right. Good evening, Cowboys, Cowgirls, and Outlaws. Welcome to the Slick Sixguns Network. I am glad to have Dustin Winegar here from Guns of the West. Thank you for tuning in, and thanks for being on here. How are you this evening?
I'm doing well, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, awesome. We've been trying to schedule this thing out a little bit. I think we had a few hiccups here and there, but unfortunately, I know that timing fell into it, life and all that stuff, but I'm glad you're here, so that's awesome. I want to remind everybody that if you guys have any questions for us during this live stream, by all means ask them in the comments section. I'll bring it up kind of throughout the interview. But let's get to know Dustin here. And so Dustin, let me ask you what's your background? Like, we know you're a YouTuber, gunfighter, all that good stuff, but tell me about you.
So, as I said, my name is Dustin. I'm a husband, a dad of 4. I live in Utah, and I've been a gun enthusiast my whole life. No law enforcement or military background or anything like that, but grew up hunting with dad, shooting with friends, that kind of thing. And in addition to that, always also watching Westerns with my dad. I don't think I've ever been to his house that he didn't have a Western movie on, especially John Wayne and stuff like that. So my love for guns kind of got blended early with Old West and Old West guns. And then also for the last 15 years, I've been making my main living, or at least in my day job, as a firearm instructor.
Okay. Would you care to tell us a little bit more about that? Because I know you do teach a concealed carry class or
Right.
anything like that. So tell us about your firearms instructing.
Yeah, primarily it is concealed firearm training. I work for a company called Legal Heat. It's a nationwide company. I think it's actually now the largest one. And they've had me traveling all over the place. I've taught concealed carry for them for the last 15 years, everywhere from Anchorage, Alaska to Hampton, Virginia, and just about everywhere in between. Certified probably a little over 30,000 students at this point for concealed carry permits. And then in addition to that, here and there, NRA training courses like rifle shooting, pistol shooting, Boy Scout merit badges, and introduction to firearm type classes. But concealed carry is mainly what I teach.
Okay. All right. And forgive me, but how long have you been doing that exactly?
It'll be 15 years in September.
Okay. And just kind of to add on to that question, what is your perception of people that are taking these classes, other than obviously they want to get their license to carry, but like from their experience to their enthusiasm, lack of enthusiasm, like tell us what runs the gamut.
Everything. we see all walks of life, from the earliest they can legally take a class, which in some states, including here, is 18, all the way up into 70s and 80s. We've had people who I wouldn't have thought would take a gun class because of, and I only base that on political statements they've shared in class. They almost seemed anti in some ways, and yet they still want to defend themselves, and I'm happy to still certify them. And of course, we get lots and lots of the heavy pro-gun types of attitudes as well.
Okay.
The majority, I'd say.
Okay, so then let me ask you this: what is the most unique gun you have seen? Because I assume that they come to the class with their own firearm, right?
Yeah, when it's a shooting course, they do. Some of the classes are just seminar, depending on what state I'm teaching in. But the ones that they shoot, they do. But nothing off the top of my head really jumps out in my memory as something that was really unique. Most of them bring pretty standard stuff that they picked up at a regular sporting goods store.
But please do tell me what is the most unique, if you have seen one or recollect it.
The only thing I could say as far as unique is some people would bring to class old firearms, like really old, like maybe Model 29 Smith and Wessons and stuff like that. But not that that's necessarily ultra unique. It's just kind of an old classic. But we see stuff like that, but nothing really unique that I can remember in a class.
Okay, gotcha. All right, yeah, because I took a concealed carry class here pretty recently, and I'll tell you that I was one of the guys that decided to bring something unique, just because that's me and I'm classy. I'm a classy broad. What can I say? Um, I brought a Colt 1903 and 32 ACP. Is that something you've seen?
I don't remember seeing one of those.
Okay. Yeah, it was it definitely caught the attention of some people, which, not to say that I'm trying to be a show off, but
Yeah,
tell me you're a firearms collector without saying you're a firearms collector.
right.
So, anyway, that was kind of neat. Utah, tell me, of all places, why?
Why I live here?
Yes, sir.
Oh, I was born here. I've just never lived anywhere else.
Okay.
Yeah, the Salt Lake Valley is where I've lived in this one valley my entire life.
Okay.
Yep.
Gotcha. And I know maybe you've answered this question in the past. One of the things that I think I have asked you before, but I don't quite remember the answer to it, is where exactly do you shoot? Because a lot of your filming varies. It sometimes goes to a club, then you go outdoors. Is this
Mhm.
land you own, or what's the deal?
No, it's just public. When you see me shooting at an actual range and like a shooting lane and everything, that's a place up in Salt Lake City called the Lee K Shooting Center. It's a state-run range, which is nice because it's really cheap to shoot there. It's like $4 for a whole day. Most of the ranges around here, you pay like $20 an hour, but up at Lee K, I can pay $4 and just have the whole thing, or at least my lane, for the entire day if I want it. And then when you see me outdoors, I have to drive a bit. I have two main places I go. They're both about an hour drive from where I live. And so I'll try to go out and do several videos each time to make it efficient. One of them, probably very few people who are watching this have ever heard of the town of Dell, Utah, Delle, but it's on I-80. It's between Salt Lake City and Wendover, Nevada. And when you're driving out there, there's just a tiny little exit and a gas station. And then to the north of that is a mountain range where you can pretty much just shoot wherever you want. And so I filmed there. And the other one that I've done more shooting at is just south of another little town in Utah called Stockton, which is not very far from me as a crow flies, but I have to go around a mountain range to get there. So it's also about an hour away.
Okay. Well, you know, I know that the audience is going to wonder where this came from, and I've been wondering it myself. And maybe it's because I haven't seen the origin story of this, but please tell me about the high fructose gang.
The high fructose gang. There's not really a specific origin. There was one particular video that I did. I don't even remember the name of it, but it was about a Cimarron Frontier in 45 Colt, which is a Pieta-made copy of the Colt Single Action Army. And I wanted to do a cheesy little opening, and it starts out with like dramatic sound effects and close-up of me and then close-up of a soda bottle. But just to make it corny and fun, I drew a face on the bottle. And I think it was my kids, actually, who just laughed and thought that was really funny and asked me to do it again. So I just started doing it in videos. And then I was like, okay, this has to be like an Old West theme. What are we going to call this? And so I just started thinking anything, soda bandits, this and that. And individually, I'd call them the carbonated bandits. And then I don't know how, but just one day I thought of the high fructose that they always warn you about on the label. So I called it the high fructose gang. And it just stuck. I've got a lot of comments on it. People like it. So now I have to keep it.
Got it. We got a question here from Arizona Ghost Riders. Hello,
Uh-oh.
Sandy. Been a long time since we've seen each other. We had you on the channel, but he has a question for you. He says, do you like shooting cartridges in your Walker more than your cap and ball?
No. The cartridge conversion is really cool, and it makes it a unique piece to have a 45 Colt in a gun that huge. And so that's really fun. But the classic Walker in cap and ball, I don't think the conversion could ever replace that for me.
Okay. So thank you, Santee, for asking that question there. So I know that you you've always had the same channel, right? You haven't
Yep.
changed channels, nothing like that. And I know that was a couple years ago you changed the name of it, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Like kind of tell me what made you want to change that, because I know that some people just keep it as their name and
Yeah.
there's reason, but tell us the reason why and all that good stuff.
Well, when I first started the channel, as you probably saw, it was just called Dustin Winegar. And when I did that, I really didn't even know what the channel would be. I just knew that, like, I've always liked teaching. I mean, like I said, I'm a firearm instructor, and I've had teaching assignments in my church and stuff like that. And I've always enjoyed teaching things, but I've also always loved entertaining. This is off topic, but I used to be a magician for a while. I had a lot of paid gigs and stuff like that. So between teaching and entertaining, I just thought YouTube would be a fun place for me to find something to do. And I love firearms. And so I figured it would be something to do with that. And it was mostly like fire or videos related to the type of instruction I do, you know, things like Glock pistols and modern rifles and stuff like that. But the problem with that was there's so much of that on the internet that I was a tiny needle in a huge haystack, like so many other small YouTubers. And it was something, I love my day job, don't get me wrong, but it was almost like just bringing my day job into my new YouTube hobby. And it was like, well, if this is a hobby, why don't I do the guns I'm passionate about, which is the Old West guns? So I started doing that, and the channel started to catch on a lot better. I think people could sense that I was more interested in doing it that way than I was doing the stuff that I just do at work. But as I did that, the channel started to grow. And I remember I was at about 9,000 subscribers. And I was talking to my friend Duke Frazier about, maybe I should have named the channel something better if people are actually going to watch it. I didn't think anybody was going to subscribe to this thing, you know? And so I just started trying to think of a name, and I went through, I don't remember probably very many of them at all that I brainstormed, but just, you know, Old West this and Wild West that and Utah this and Western that. And when I just had that idea, just the guns of the West, I don't know. I just liked the sound of it. And I told it to my wife. She's like, yeah, it sounds good. So I did a search to make sure there wasn't already one, and I didn't find one. And so we just went ahead and changed it. And now the channel pretty much stays, not without exception, but pretty much stays on that Old West theme.
Okay. Because that was going to be my next question is why did you, if you were so into teaching modern, what got you into black powder? Well, I mean, let me ask you that. What of all the Old West stuff you could have gotten into, why specifically did you get into cap and ball?
It's I think it's just kind of the uniqueness and the differentness about, if that's a word. You know, there's one thing, it's one thing to shoot the cartridge revolvers, and I love those. I have them, I've shown them on the channel, but the cap and ball revolvers, just having, you know, it's almost basically a reloading station built into a gun where you're loading, measuring your powder and all that. That just always, ever since I was a teenager, I thought those were fascinating. I remember going shooting with my friend's dad in high school, and he's the one that first got me into them, you know, going on 25 years ago or so, 24, 25 years ago. And they just always stuck with me. And so then I started buying them, you know, a while later, and then started bringing them into my YouTube channel and stuff. But yeah, just the uniqueness of them. And I guess it also, when you have to measure the powder for every shot rather than just popping shells in, there's just something about you're more connected to what the gun is doing, it seems like to me.
Okay. So then let me ask you this, and this was actually a debate that came up between me and Mike Bellevue.
Okay.
So, and it was, it was a friendly debate. It was, nothing bad, but I had a question that I really wanted answered. And I kind of felt offended by it because, I'll be honest, I thought I had a legitimate, revolver there, and I still technically feel I do. I digress. So, what do you think of the Colt signature series? Do you consider them original, or do you consider them actual Colt revolvers? Even though there's some idiosyncrasies that make them not so, or may not seem so, or do you do you feel otherwise? I guess what I'm asking is, do you think they're legitimate Colts?
I tend to kind of sway toward yes. And I think anything that, because you're talking about the ones Colt makes, right? But they're ones they made way later, not from like the 1860s and stuff.
Yeah, it's what you would call a third generation Colt cap and ball.
Okay, that's what I thought you were talking about. And yeah, I consider it a legitimate Colt pistol, but I kind of break it into more that rather than just have two categories like legitimate or not, I would say let's break it into that, and then in the legitimate ones, then break it into, historical versus kind of their own throwback to their own history kind of a thing.
Okay.
But yeah, I would agree with you. I'd say you got a legitimate revolver.
Oh, well, in my Bellevue's view, I don't, because of the way that the manufacturing process worked. So
I think Uberti makes some of the parts, or at least starts some of the parts. I'm not totally clear on that.
So they're apparently, and please correct me if I'm wrong, anyone in the comments section, please let me know about the Signature Series Colts. But he told me pretty much that they are only assembled here by Colt. They aren't nothing's manufactured. They are essentially created in Italy, shipped over here, and then put together.
Yeah.
So
I don't know. I still feel like if Colt's putting their own name on it and they're putting it together in their factory, I think you can call that a Colt revolver. I would.
You make me feel better, because it's actually it's got a gold plating on the cylinder, so I have to say it's pretty. You know, I would hate to say, oh, it's just a Uberti.
Yeah.
A fancy Uberti, but but anyway, that was kind of just some fun back and forth that we had, because I felt like I had been cheated out of a lot of money.
The way I look at it, like, there's probably a lot of manufacturers of a lot of things, not just guns, that get parts from contractors and stuff like that and then put it together and put their name on it. And I don't think it makes it any less legitimate. So I think the same thing would go with the revolver. So I'm with you on that one.
Okay. Well, maybe I'll ask him the question again and bring it up in that sort of aspect, and maybe actually bring your name in there. Because, that leads into my next question. How long have you been on YouTube? Because I think you have more experience than I do in YouTube and potentially in this niche.
Well, when I started the channel that is now Guns of the West, when it was first called Dustin Winegar, that was back in, I think that was in like 2010 or 11. So it's been a while. But having said that, there were years of inactivity. I started it. I did a few pistols about Glocks and stuff. They're still there. If anybody wants to watch them, they can. Although I'd say do it at your own risk. They're terrible. The lighting's bad. The audio's bad. Everything's bad. It was just somebody who'd never done YouTube before. But then there was a long time that I just didn't really do it until I kind of had that epiphany that, well, maybe I should be doing this about the guns I actually would love to do. And so when I started to actually get active, I think that was probably late 2016 or maybe in 2017. And, it's funny, Santee was just on in the comments because he was kind of a big boost. And I've told him this before, but I was just doing a video here and there, and I happened to comment on a video of his where he had taken like some friends on a tour of Tombstone down in Arizona. And I guess he clicked on my name from that comment. He watched a little bit of my channel, and he sent me a private message on Facebook. It was recommending a microphone. I think it was the Rode microphone that I still have today. And anyway, he kind of just gave me a little bit of encouragement. We went back and forth a little bit, and it kind of got me excited. Yeah, I should get a better mic and this and that, and started doing it. And I think that was in 2017, and the channel's been a lot more active since then. I try to do videos every week, but as a dad of 4 and 2 jobs in addition to a YouTube channel, actually 2 YouTube channels now, it's hard sometimes to get a video out every week. Yeah,
I would say. And what's the age of your kids? Rough. I mean, I don't want you to give out too much information, but
sure, it's a wide spread. So I have one who just turned 17, and I have one who will be 6 months next week. And so I have a 17, a 15, a 1 almost 4, and a 6-month-old. So kind of a big spread there.
Okay, yeah. I mean, 6 months. Yeah, I don't know how you're even doing this, to be honest with you. The 4 kids, the 4 kids alone, I'd be pulling my hair out, but
I already did.
Hey, you and I got something in common, man. There we go.
Yeah.
This is my daughter. I just want to say that this is my daughter. This is not my son. This is my daughter. So, yeah, 6 months. Congratulations, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate that.
Tuco the Rat, if you're familiar with him, has a question for you. He says, Dustin, what do you think of using YouTube Shorts on your channel? I would have to ask you the same question because I really don't see it.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. I've done a few. I haven't really landed on how I want to use them, but it's something that I would like to do a lot more of. One thing I've tried to use it for, nobody can find percussion caps right now. And everybody that always asks me on my channel, where are you getting these caps? Where are you getting these caps? Well, I'm not. I had a good stockpile before everything went crazy and I'm shooting out of those. But every once in a while I'll find caps in stock and I'll post a YouTube short from a Sportsman's Warehouse or a Cabela's or whatever it is. Say, hey, get down here and buy these caps. So I tried to use shorts to kind of, I don't know, just anything that can be helpful for people who need or are looking for stuff. Little things like try to guess what's wrong with this gun. Like I switched 1860 Army grips out with 1851 Navy, and people put all their guesses what they thought I changed. But yeah, shorts are great. I think they're a great thing. I just need to kind of settle on what I'm going to use them for and get more consistent in posting them.
So with that being said, what is the goal of your YouTube channel other than obviously, like, I mean, are you just trying to grow as much as you can? Do you want to do this full time? I know that people have their own views of what they want to do. I just want to know yours.
Yeah, and it's hard to say because of some of the kind of turbulence that it's gone through. YouTube, as we know, they don't love guns. They tolerate a lot of gun-related stuff, but they don't love them. My channel's been completely demonetized, so there's no revenue coming in from ads, and it's all because it's just gun-related content, they told me. And I used to say I would love to do it full-time, and I think I would still say that. I started a business a few years ago, Guns of the West. That's the gunsoftheweststore.com with the paper cartridge kits and all that kind of thing. And so the channel is kind of multi-purpose now. Part of it is that's how I let people know about the Guns of the West business. But also the thing that I probably love the most is just the growing community. Not just the, high subscriber count, which is cool. That's kind of fun and bragging rights almost. But by having that high subscriber count, it also just brings more people in. I've met so many people. My daughter and I had a booth at a gun show, and people were coming up to me wanting to take pictures and stuff like that. And it's just kind of grown this community of people that I wouldn't have met or known otherwise. And so I guess a big goal is to just keep growing that and keep trying to grow the Guns of the West business at the same time.
Okay. And how is that business doing so far?
Very well.
Good. And
yeah.
Are you guys incorporated, LLC'd, or
LLC?
Okay,
yeah.
That's good. I would think you would at least be an LLC, considering you're dealing with a lot of firearm stuff.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Do you do a little gunsmithing or anything like that?
No, I never have. I mean, I'll work on my own, but I've never taken on anybody else's firearms and done it. I'll say this: I don't have any gunsmithing training whatsoever, so I'm willing to experiment, like on my cap and ball guns and stuff like that. And I've never had anything really go wrong. But yeah, I don't take other people's firearms to work on.
Okay,
maybe someday.
Right. Yeah, so something to think about.
Yeah.
Tuco is asking you, did you get any strikes on your channel? You were talking about how YouTube kind of has this issue with gun channels. Did you actually experience that? And how's it been so far?
So first thing that happened was they would demonetize individual videos. And when that would happen, you get to appeal it. You get to appeal that, and then that'll go to because when a single video gets demonetized, that's usually not a person making that decision. It's just software. I don't know how that works, but AI, I guess. And it'll say, oh, this isn't suitable for advertisers. So they pull the monetization. If you appeal it, it'll get reviewed by a person. And I would win those appeals almost every single time. They would come back and say, oh, you're right. This video's fine. But then one day, despite winning almost all the appeals, one day I woke up to an email that said this channel is not suitable. And they just pulled all monetization from the entire thing. They didn't give me a community strike at that time, but they said you can continue to post, but you cannot earn revenue on ads. And then they said, we still reserve the right to run ads because we get to make money on it, but you don't get a share anymore. Is what they said.
Oh,
And then that's been a while now that it's been demonetized. And financially, the channel was big enough at that time. It was a big financial hit when that happened, because we gotten accustomed to a large chunk of, not really large, but like percentage wise, it was a decent portion of our monthly income.
yeah.
Well, anyway, so we worked around it. We still had the Guns of the West business, which we had at that time. So it was a loss, but whatever, still building the community and everything. And then I did get a strike. I think it was last year, and I don't even remember which video it was, but there was I think it was a casting bit, like a lead casting video, casting balls and bullets and stuff with a mold. And so they took it down, and I had a couple more of those. So I said, okay, well, I don't want any more strikes. So I took down all my casting stuff and I put them on Rumble. So if anybody wants to watch the Guns of the West, lead casting, there's a Guns of the West channel on Rumble too, and that's where they are. Okay. But so I took all those down, and they wouldn't let me post for a week. And I couldn't comment for a week, I don't think. And after 90 days, the strike came off. So as of right now, the channel's clean, has no strikes, but it's still not monetized. Gotcha.
Yeah. Speaking of the whole strike system and the warnings and all that, I actually got a warning. I didn't get any strikes or anything like that. Still haven't to this day, but I got a warning, not on a gun video, but it was on a knife video. Oh. So it was, and and it was a history video too. So it's just kind of funny how sometimes the system works, but I appealed it, and it still hasn't been decided whether that warning should come off or not. And that was over a year ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and you can't appeal it again because it says we're still in the deliberating process and all that stuff. So, yeah, that really stinks. Kind of at the powers that be, and
And I always say, it does stink for sure. At the end of the day, though, in fairness, what I'll say is it's their show, it's their company. I didn't agree with the move, but I guess they can do what they want.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's a whole debate we can get into in another time. And I know that, I know that a lot of people would love to talk about that, but this interview is not about YouTube; it's about you. Right. So let's go ahead and move on. Yes. Why are you interested in the period of the Old West? I know you said you watch movies, but talk to me about your passion, why you got into it, and all that good stuff.
Well, yeah, I definitely started with movies because my dad would always have movies on, and he was a huge Western fan, particularly John Wayne. But the things that stood out to me in the movies, and I think movies are a good way to start this answer because that is definitely where I first learned about the Old West. But the thing that stood out to me about the Old West, I'm glad I didn't live it. I like modern medicine. I like modern conveniences, all that kind of stuff. But there's such an art to the Old West. There's kind of a romance to it. The clothing, all that Victorian clothing is artistic. All that work that went into it, even firearms. My daily carry gun is a Glock 19, and it looks just like every other Glock 19 on the shelf at any gun store. There's nothing special about it. But with the cap and ball revolvers and the early, the Colt single action army and some of the early Smith and Wessons and all those, guns were like artistic back then, and the things that went into them, and not only in the designs and how they work, but just engravings and different grips and different finishes and all that kind of stuff. It's just so much more appealing to me.
Nope. Are you still there?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, sorry. We cut out there, I guess.
It went black for a second, but I'm still here.
Oh, that's all good. Yeah. So anyway, you were saying that the guns were artistic and all that stuff, and I kind of missed a little bit.
Yeah, just how, everything today, not just guns, but everything today is just mass produced. Where back then, things were done by hand, and some things done by machinery too, but even, machinery that was made by hand. And there was just like an art form to everything, guns, clothing, just everything. Everything just was more appealing to me than just the mass production that we have today where everything looks the same as everything else.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's a pretty good, I mean, all the people I talk to have different reasons. There's no one particular reason.
Yeah.
But it's just kind of runs the gamut. I mean, I got you who's interested in the artistry. Me, the self-reliance of the era.
Mm-hmm.
Santee, kind of the same thing. Uh, what was it? I interviewed St. Andrew TV. He was more about the clothing and just how dapper people were
Yeah.
back then. The idea of the exploration and the expansion, and even just the firearms of the era is something that's cool. So I mean, we all get into this niche for different reasons. Is really what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You love the history, or you love something particular about the Old West that got you into it and got you hooked. So I hope that our audience can connect with you on that. That's awesome. With that being said, I have to ask, because we don't all just like Old West history, is there some other era that you're interested in, and what reason?
Two main ones, and I don't consider myself like an expert historian on either of them. They're just fascinating to me, and I love learning what I can. One is the American Revolution, and the other one is World War II.
Okay. What is it about the American Revolution that you find interesting?
Largely just the boldness to go against what was probably the most powerful empire of the world at that time, and obviously it was complicated and there was a lot to it, but to actually just take that step and declare independence, knowing that you're a traitor for doing this, and just the courage of it, and then everything that just come unrolled afterwards. I just think that's amazing. Not to mention, being the gun guy that I am, some fascinating stuff from that period too, with the flintlocks and everything. So I've always just loved that. And then World War II, it just blows my mind how such an evil person was able to do so much and come close to doing so much more, and how the world had to unite. Even the United States uniting with countries like the Soviet Union, who are not necessarily friendly, but how everybody had to come together to fight this evil. And then also, again, the firearms of it are fascinating to me. I think any history period I talk about, I'm going to be drawn to that. But yeah, with World War II, just the massive scale of it, and nations coming together to get through that is just amazing to me. And
Yeah.
another period I'm glad I did not live through.
Yeah. Do you actually have any family connections to that era?
On my wife's side, her grandfather was in charge. What was it? It was like an artillery crew, and it was his turn. They were just about to go ashore into Japan, and Japan surrendered like right before. So he actually didn't have to see combat. He still went ashore, and he was stationed there for a while, but it was peaceful by then. But
Okay.
other than that, I have other family in military, but not direct World War II that I know of.
Okay.
Most of
So,
it later, like between Korea, Vietnam, and stuff like that, but not in wartime.
okay. Yeah, it seems like there's well, I know kind of why more people in our niche have more of a personal connection to things like World War II, and that might actually answer the question here. Deja Vu says, "Why do most Old West buffs like World War II?" He's talking about the history in particular. He says, "I like it too." LOL. But why don't you take a crack at that question there?
I don't know that I've ever made that connection. I know I like World War II. Well, that came out. I don't like World War II, but I like the era of it and learning about it. But I never made the connection that Old West buffs like World War II. I don't know if I have an answer to why.
I got an answer, but I don't think anyone's going to be happy with it.
Okay, go for it.
I think the reason is because a lot of Old West buffs, at least that I know of, aside from a few, um, are mostly on the older side, and as a result, have either been children during that time, and saw their families personally go through it, or they are old enough to remember someone who did go through that era that may not necessarily have been immediate family or was. I think that's the majority of the reason. I could be wrong,
I
but
think that makes a lot of sense.
yeah. I mean, it's kind of a, like I said, I don't like to call people who are interested in the Old West old, but no pun intended. Um, but the majority of people that I have talked to are usually a bit on the older side.
Yeah, me too. I look at my YouTube analytics and it shows you like your biggest age groups that watch your channel. And most of mine lately, there's been a lot of younger ones coming in, but still probably the majority of my viewers are in the, older generations.
Right. Well, I mean, that's just kind of the times, that people grew up in, and at that the baby boomer era kind of got started with the Old West movies and all that stuff. So it really came into cinema, and you know, in World War II had not happened too much before that. So that makes sense. But you know, I hope that answers the question.
I think that's a good answer. Makes sense.
Yeah, but to kind of go along with what you're saying, I mean, I like World War II history as well. So I mean, I'm right there with you. I'm not super old, but I'm not super young either. So I think you and I might be in the same age range. I'm not sure. I don't know if I want to take a guess at your age or what.
Well, I'll just say this: I'm in the early 40s.
Oh, okay. All right. I'm a little younger than that. So, but that's I consider myself a little bit older than I actually am, just in how I conduct myself and stuff. But anyway, cool. That's great. I know you said you do concealed carry classes, but do you do any competitive shooting?
I actually never have. I get asked that a lot. I have people ask me all the time if I do cowboy action, the SASS stuff, and then also some of the modern stuff, IPSC and things like that. And I actually never done any of it. I don't have anything against it, but I have a very busy schedule with traveling and stuff like that, and I just don't really have the time to dive into that. And I'm not really necessarily a competitive enough natured person to prioritize that enough to change my schedule.
Okay. Yeah, I actually thought that you were actually a SAS member
I'm not.
for the longest time.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's definitely something you got to consider with your schedule and all that stuff. But I mean,
It looks fun.
Yeah, is it something that you're going to get into or thinking about, or?
It just depends on how life goes down the road, and like kids get older and then they're not as dependent every minute of every day and that kind of stuff. We'll just have to see how it goes.
Well,
If the opportunity arose, I would be interested enough to take it.
Well, I think that you'd be surprised. You would probably show up to that first day of your match, and people will be like, "I know exactly who you are," without actually saying, "Hey, what's your alias?" They would know who you are.
Yeah, I get a lot of people who are involved in that in my YouTube comments, so I think you're right. People would probably know who I was there.
It happens with me too. I'll show up to a club match or something, and they'll be like, "Wait a minute, you do videos, don't you?"
Yeah.
And the next question, usually the next comment that usually comes from that is well, when are you going to do the subject on this?
Yeah,
You know?
that happens to me too all the time.
Yeah.
That range that I mentioned earlier, the Lee K shooting center, every time, I mean, I think I can say without exception, every time I go there, at least one, usually more than one other shooter will come up to me, like during a ceasefire when we're all just kind of standing back behind the line. They'll come up to me and ask me about this video or that video. Sometimes they throw me off because they don't even introduce themselves first. One guy came up to me and said, "You know, Dustin, you've sure cost me a lot of money," which was funny. And I said, "Oh, yeah, what'd you buy?" And it turned out I was sitting there shooting the Remington carbine cap and ball revolver. And he's like, "Well, I saw your first video on that, so I ordered it, and I've got all your paper cartridge kits, the bolt loops, and I can't remember what else he had bought that I'd recommended on the channel." But that was how he started the conversation, which was really funny.
I'm sure his wife is happy too.
Oh yeah, I don't want to meet her. She's probably pretty angry with me.
Oh boy. No, that's a good one. Yeah, that's awesome. At least you get people that do recognize you, and you can actually interact with that, and it's a far better, I'm sure, than interacting with people online. So,
Oh yeah,
you know.
yeah.
So with that being said, I have to ask you. I mean, you've got quite a huge following here. Um, you've been doing this for quite a long time, uh, and it goes without saying, haters are going to hate, right?
Oh yeah.
Do you get a lot of hate with the
Every day.
knowledge you have and
Yeah, every day.
every
Uh,
day?
multiple times a day. Yeah. And sometimes if people are really bad and if they're repeating over and over and over again, I'll just block them. And it's not that I don't try to do that like out of like thin skin or anything, but I like to take the time to answer comments because I want to be helpful. But when I'm getting buried with those, it's hard to fish through and find the ones that are worth talking to and try to help with their questions. But yeah, I get told, I don't know how many times a day I get told how overweight I am and all this other stuff, and how much I don't know anything about that gun. I don't know anything about this gun, and all that kind of stuff. Just hate all day, every day. But as a YouTuber, that's part of, I mean, that's just the way it is, unfortunately.
Yeah. I will say this. I think the bigger you get, the more I would say the less the comments hurt.
Oh yeah.
I guess I would say, just because you can tell whoever is doing it. I'll say this. Like, when I had a smaller following, some of the comments that were more negative, I think, were more in depth. Like, they would go into detail and give me a whole history lesson. But ever since I've gotten bigger, it's like, you're fat, or
Yeah.
you're this, you're that, you're wrong. And it's like, this is so superficial. And,
Yeah. Yeah, it gets to a point, you're right. It doesn't necessarily hurt. You get used to it. And one thing I would say, if anybody watching this is a new YouTuber or planning to be a YouTuber, don't get discouraged by any of that. And one thing you can do to help yourself know that you don't need to be discouraged, when somebody leaves a hate comment, click on their name, look at their channel, and never, ever will it be successful. You'll never see a successful channel do that. It's always somebody with like one or two or no videos,
yeah,
probably a subscriber count that is 2 digits or less, and
yeah,
they're just out there hating. They don't know anything, so don't take it personally. They are just lashing out. Something else in their life is the problem. It's not you or your videos.
yeah. No, I have to agree on that. Some of them get downright funny, though. And,
Yeah, some of them do.
I kind of, sometimes I honestly go down the rabbit hole, and, I try to, sort of, I don't want to say prove them wrong, but I just kind of play the game a little bit.
Yeah.
Feed into it, but not enough to where I'm consumed by it. I know that at the end of the day, this comment is just going to be a comment. It's not,
Yep.
going to be something that is going to destroy my life, but I'm going to make this person work for every word that they said. You know what I mean? So, I just have fun with it sometimes. That's how I've dealt with it, to be honest
Yeah.
with you. But that's awesome, dude. Okay. So, big controversial question. Are you
Uh-oh.
ready?
I'm ready.
What is your most prized or favorite firearm? Go.
It will surprise you, but
Okay.
I think I would have to say it's a tie between two, but I'll explain why. Both of them are air rifles. They're not black powder and they're not Old West. One of them is one that was left to me by my father when he passed away. It's called the Benjamin Marauder Field and Target. And the reason that one is so prized to me is because I grew up, my first experiences with firearms were with him, but his only real interest was like hunting, trying to get him to just go out and shoot for a day or even for an afternoon or a morning was like trying to pull teeth. He just was not interested in it. No matter what firearms I brought, he didn't want to go. He didn't have time or didn't want to make time. But somehow, I think it was YouTube. He was on YouTube and he got into these air rifles and he got interested enough that he bought one. And where he lived and where my mother still lives, there's a really, really bad ground squirrel problem. It ruins all the farm fields. So they try poisons and all this stuff. So he got into shooting those, trying to help with the pest control. And it like consumed him. That was like his favorite thing in the world to do. And so that got me excited. Oh my gosh, Dad's shooting. Maybe I'll get an air gun and we can shoot together finally. Well, right after that, unfortunately, he got brain cancer, and 4 months later, he was no longer with us. But he left me that, and so that's really special to me because we finally had something that not that we never had anything that we shared in common, but like as far as shooting goes, we finally had something we connected on there, and then it was just abruptly halted. So to have that is a really special one to me, and they're just a whole lot of fun. And the reason I say it's tied with another one is because as special as that one is, it has some limitations, and I've invested later in a much better one called the FX Dreamline, which is another high-end air rifle. So performance-wise, I'd have to say the FX, but sentimental-wise, it would be Dad's Benjamin.
That is not what I expected.
I know it wasn't. But
No.
yeah, I've gotten to the point. In fact, I have 2 YouTube channels now. The other one is called Air Guns Are Amazing. Because that's what I came to learn. When he told me he bought an air gun, I thought he meant, pump like this 10 times and then you get a shot and then you do it again. And no, these are, I had no idea what air rifles had become. They'll blow your mind what the new ones can do and stuff. And they have magazines, you get multi shots without having to, they just work like a bolt action rifle now with just an air reservoir. So the fascination of them makes it so they're almost my favorite things to shoot.
That's interesting. I think they also make I think they make some air rifles in 50 cal.
They do.
Yeah, that's slightly scary there because it's quiet.
Yeah.
But it's still a 50 cal projectile.
Yeah. And the 50 cal ones, they're fairly loud. I mean, you want to wear ear protection with those.
Right.
But the ones that I have, you put a moderator on the end of it and it just sounds like a small little ping sound.
Gotcha.
And yet they're powerful and accurate at well over 100 yards. Some of them several hundred yards, which for a firearm is not that impressive, but for an air gun, it's really impressive.
Okay. Yeah, you're gonna have to share this video with me because I gotta see it. So
okay,
definitely. I didn't even know that channel existed. You got to share it with me. I want to hear all about it. So.
All right. Yeah, it's a new one. I think it's like a little over 1,000 subscribers, maybe 1,200 or something like that.
Okay.
But yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's called Air Guns Are Amazing.
Awesome. Yeah.
But nobody needs to worry. Guns of the West is still the main one, and I'm sure always will be.
Yeah. Okay. All right. We got a question from the audience here.
Okay.
Deja Vu says, favorite historical gunfighter, lawman or criminal? Name
Porter
and I
Rockwell.
guess what faction?
I would say Porter Rockwell. And lawman or criminal? Both, probably. I think he was kind of on both sides. But I'm LDS myself, or Mormon, as what a lot of people probably know it as. And so is Porter Rockwell. And so there's kind of a connection there. Also, he lived a large part of his life right here in the valley where I live. He's buried here in the valley. And so I've always been kind of drawn to his stories. I have a great book called, I think it's just called Stories from the Life of Porter Rockwell. And a lot of it, you know, like with any Old West legend, I'm sure there's been a lot of lore and mythology added to what is fact. But I would say he's my favorite Old West figure.
Okay. Yeah. Um, to be honest with you, I really don't have a favorite Old West figure. Um, I just I think they're all generally cool. Uh, but I guess if I was pressed, I think Bass Reeves is a good one.
Mm.
Just because of his story. You know, when you're talking about, you know, a guy that was of color, um, you know, for a time that wasn't really racially equal, um, you know, and then at the same time having to, I think what was most interesting about him was he actually hunted down his own kid. Uh, and correct me if I'm wrong on that, somebody, but I believe he hunted down one of his sons, and then he also shot one of his partners, and he put himself on trial for it.
Hmm.
Turned himself in. I guess he was on the job, and he had a negligent discharge and killed his partner,
Oh.
and so he put himself on trial for murder. So I think what's kind of interesting is he was set apart not only in his color, but I guess he was set apart in his morals and ethics and wanted to essentially help his, um, I guess, if you will, his race look better.
Mm.
But you know, it's just kind of interesting to see that. I thought that was kind of neat, just his story in
Yeah,
general.
dude.
Um, you know, nonetheless, there's also the whole Lone Ranger idea that is appealing as well. But yeah, that's what I would say. Um, moving on. What are some things that you would like to make an impact on in the Western niche in particular?
So the two would come to mind. One is just the community building that I mentioned before, and I think the YouTube channel is probably the best tool I have at my disposal for that. And the other one, ever since my business started, not only has it done well for me, but I love the feedback I get from so many customers every single day through emails and stuff, and sometimes YouTube comments of how much it's enabled them to take their shooting hobby to another level that they may not have otherwise been able to, like being able to easily shoot things like paper cartridges and stuff, to experience another aspect of the history that's not available, you know, very widely otherwise. So I like being able to build community and add that. And then also, you know, I guess the other way to word that is just enable people to be able to enjoy the type of shooting that I enjoy through like Guns of the West products, and
Okay.
hopefully expand those even more going forward, which there are plans to do.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think you're in the right community to do that, and I think what's interesting, and let me know if you follow him. I'm sure you do, but Cap and Ball TV.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
The one in Hungary.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
he kind of does similar stuff as far as business wise, what you
yeah.
do. Did you get any ideas from him?
No, the ideas that I got more came from I watched Mike Bellevue a lot, and he taught a lot about paper cartridges, and he talked about a book. Um, why did the author's name just go out of my head? I've emailed the guy, for crying out loud. Anyway, John. His name's John, but anyway, he's an author about how to make cap and ball cartridges and stuff, and he would talk about all the historical ways and everything. And my brother-in-law, who had a 3D printer, and my brother-in-law is not really a shooter. He goes shooting occasionally, but he's not a historian or anything like that. But he had the gear, and so I got with him on, you know, okay, this is how big paper cartridges are, and we kind of came up with a tool, and it's evolved a lot. You know, what you see on my website now at gunsoftheweststore.com is much different from what was originally, because it's gone through some evolutions of what worked and what didn't work. But yeah, it just kind of came from that. I don't claim to like have invented a paper cartridge former. I mean, they were doing it in the 1860s.
Right.
And then even today, like you mentioned, there's Cap and Ball and there's others, but we feel like we've got a really good one, maybe even the best one, and the reviews say so as well. But yeah, it's just been a lot of fun to see so many people say, thanks so much. I love that I was able to get into this type of shooting with my revolvers that I wasn't able to do before. And so that's just a really good feeling that I want to keep bringing into the Old West community, so to speak.
So let me ask you this: what is the best way for someone to get a hold of those products?
gunsoftheweststore.com.
And you just have your own website?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and there's a link to that in the video description of every video on the Guns of the West channel.
You might have a new customer.
Oh.
There you go. Yeah, that's I like the idea, and it sounds like you got a pretty good product. That's awesome. And I know that there's other YouTubers that have actually reviewed it that are within our niche. So
yeah, a lot of them.
They've had nothing but good things to say about it.
Yeah, that's been really great.
Yeah. So other than YouTube, you're on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
You're also you also got your own website. Where are some other places that people can find you?
That's pretty much it. I did just recently, and by recently I mean like in the last couple of weeks, I think. So brand new. I put up a Guns of the West Instagram. Haven't really done a thing with it. I don't really know much about it. I'll have to talk to my teenagers about that. But then I'll get that up and rolling and try to have some content, like little short videos there and images and stuff like that, little posts. But Facebook, I try to be pretty regular on there. And if they just search on Facebook, Guns of the West, it should pull right up. It doesn't have near the following the YouTube channel does, but enough that it should be easy to find just by searching the Guns of the West name.
Okay. So then let me ask you this about your YouTube channel. What is your largest viewed video?
It was a video that I did called The Cowboy Load, and it was whether to load 5 shots or 6 in a single action army revolver. And the funny thing about that was, and you tell me if this is how it goes for you. It seems, not always, but sometimes it seems, and this is just funny to me, when I really take a lot of time, like when I work all week long, on a video and really put in time and travel and everything to get it done, I'll post it and it might do, it it gets somewhat accepted, somewhat not. And then other times I'll be running short on time and I'll just throw something together, not garbage, hopefully, but something that I can just kind of hurry and put together and it'll explode. For some reason, those are the ones that really do well. And that's kind of how this video was. I just did an explanation of, if you're at the range and you're going to load all 6, yeah, who cares? Of course, no problem. But if it was going to be holstered all day or something, here's why you might want to leave a hammer on an empty chamber, kind of a thing. And I did a demonstration. I took my little non-metal mallet and laid the primer right on a live round, but with no bullet or powder, just a primer in a case, and just hit it, not very hard at all, and it detonated the primer. And so that was kind of just the point. Well, that video's had over 3 million views. I think it's like 3.2, where most of my more successful videos are like 250,000, maybe close to 500,000. But that one just blew up. And the thing that really did it, it was doing fairly well. But when Red Dead Redemption 2 came out, I think people who were not into the Old West guns before started looking up guns from the game. And one of them, the game calls the Cattleman, is actually based on a single action army. And so with the introduction of that game, that video just exploded. I've seen articles about that video, which always surprised me. When the Alec Baldwin incident happened on Rust, there was a video I was watching from a channel that had like 500,000 subscribers or something. And it just was a video about the incident. So I just clicked on it and they said the gun, he must have pulled the trigger because here's how the gun works. And I did a double take because all of a sudden it was footage of me in that video. And it had a little credit at the bottom, Guns of the West, and I was like, oh, wow, there's that video again. It gets shown everywhere.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, to answer your question about about how my videos do. I will find that my history videos do really well, and my parodies do really, really well.
Oh, I'll bet.
But as far as it's kind of a hit or miss with everything else, no matter how much time or how little time I put into it. But there are specific genres that I know are going to get more hits than others. Surprisingly, some of my videos, and it really depends on what the gun is, but I'll do disassembly videos and or reassembly, and those don't get near enough people. So you actually have to own the gun, go looking for that gun, and that's the whole premise of why I do it, is because I want people to learn, the innards of it, learn how to take it apart, clean it, all that good stuff. But it has a tendency; those have a tendency to lose audience retention.
Yeah.
So, but my parodies do really well, which is something I did not expect, and I honestly do not consider myself a comedian. But apparently, like, that's something that where my channel has done really well at. So,
well, I'm sure those are probably pretty fun to do too.
I'll bring one up here. Deja Vu says, "What does your gun say about your videos? Are awesome." Yeah, I had a series on what your favorite Old West rifle says about you, what your favorite Old West revolver says about you, and what your ammunition type says about you. And I honestly pirated that, pirated, if you will. It's kind of something that all YouTubers do, and I'm sure you can relate, where you borrow an idea and you basically reverse engineer it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I took that idea from another channel and basically just put it in an Old West variant, and it just took off. And I'm like, wow, like I didn't know people actually cared about this or thought it was funny. It was kind of just a one-off. Like, I hope it would do something, but obviously it did. And Deja Vu again says 38. I shoot 38 specials, and the video is right on. I'm glad I guessed you. But the truth is when I actually make fun of something, I'm making fun of myself.
Yeah.
There's some little aspect of it that is actually me in there. So I figure if I'm that way, other people are, and that's where it comes. So my highest ranking video is actually a versus video between people who shoot 45 Colt versus those who shoot 38. So, and it's just, some people look at that video and they're like, what did I just watch? That makes no sense. But, those who are in the cowboy action community can somewhat relate to it, and be like, oh yeah, that's that guy, so just kind of neat. Funny note though, in one of the scenes in that video, I actually used your method of loading a blank.
Oh.
So, yeah, thanks.
Yeah. So, that was actually, I learned it from Santee.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, the reverse engineering just keeps going.
Yeah. Well, and the only reason I even did a video on that, and I asked him if he would be okay with it, and he said, yeah, it's totally fine. And the reason I did a video about blanks is because I don't do this much anymore, but every once in a while, just for entertainment value, I might be shooting a particular revolver, and just to get a cool camera angle, I'll have a shot that's like right at the viewer's screen. And that's a blank, obviously, because I don't want to shoot my camera. And so I'll do it just to get the smoke and everything, and just have that. I don't really do that anymore, but I was planning on doing some videos on like how I do videos, and I still may do that in the future. But that's why I did a video on how I was making the blanks, so that people would understand why there are blanks in the video, and this is where they come from, how they're made.
Got it.
I do have to share something I just remembered. as far as videos that do well and videos that don't. There was one time I thought it was funny. I did a video as kind of a parody because Apple, on their emojis for the iPhone, they used to have a little revolver. Well, they changed it, and there are rumors that it was be anti-gun reasons and all that. I don't know if that's true, but they changed it. Now it's a little green squirt gun with a red tip on it. And I was at the dollar store one day with my family, and I saw squirt guns that looked exactly like the Apple emoji gun. And so I bought them, and I did a gun review video. I put them in a gun case and everything, and I opened up the case on camera, and I said, we're going to review the Apple emoji gun. It's actually a real gun. And I was outside with a paper target set up, shooting it with water, and then scoring the target where the water was and everything. I thought it was funny, and I thought everybody would know I was making a joke, but I posted it on Reddit, on Guns, the biggest gun-related Reddit page. And without warning, they banned me for life from the page. Just for posting that when I was just trying to make a joke, and they banned me for life. The video's still on the Guns of the West channel, and it's stupid. But I thought people would laugh, haha. But no, I've gone. I'm never allowed to post on Guns ever again because I posted that.
Reddit, the interesting platform.
Yeah, that was my first and last experience with Reddit.
Yeah. No, that's a good one though. That's awesome. I'm gonna have to look that up now. But yeah, that's great. Yeah, definitely. What you know, we're having fun with this. I'm going to keep it rolling just because I do have questions, and I'm sure the audience has a few more. But I don't want you to stay up too late, and I don't want to either. So,
Sure.
What is your favorite Western movie and why?
My favorite Western movie is Tombstone, and for a few reasons. One of the big reasons is I'm a big fan of most of the people in it. At least most of the actors who played main characters. Kurt Russell, Val Kilmer, Sam Elliott, Bill Paxton, all those guys. I love all those guys in almost all the movies they do. Plus, just the look of it. It seems so authentic, and I'm not the best expert, but like talking with Santee, who's pretty knowledgeable, he gives the movie a lot of credit for that too, like the clothing and stuff. So just the overall story, the action, but also just the cast that I love anyway, and the appearance of it. I just love that movie.
Yeah, the Tombstone's a good movie. I think what's kind of interesting about the whole Wyatt Earp vendetta ride and all that stuff is that you learn how political it actually was.
Yeah.
And I mean, that comes from a lot of the books that are out there, not the movie, but
yeah.
I mean, it's like you have, Democrat cowboys, who back then were, the outlaws, but the Democrat Party back then was kind of seen more as the less government party, if you will, and then they kind of had a party switch, but and then Wyatt, who ran for sheriff, on a Republican ticket, if you will, against Sheriff Behan and all that stuff, who actually supported the Cowboys, and so it was all about voting and stuff, and then to complicate that even further, you had rumors that Doc Holliday was actually part of a stage robbery, and how he was the one who shot Mr. Philpott, who was, the stagecoach driver at the time. At least I believe he was the stagecoach driver, but I know that was the guy that was shot. It was assumed that Doc Holliday was part of that. And then there were threats of he's gonna, Wyatt Earp is gonna kill. No, he wasn't gonna kill anybody. He was gonna rat out. Who was the guy in the movie? The one that was kind of the weasel. I'm sorry.
Ike.
Yeah. So Ike Clanton and Wyatt cut a deal. in the movie, it's kind of portrayed as, good guy, bad guy kind of thing. But truth be told, they kind of work together on a few things. And Ike was afraid that Wyatt was going to give him up.
Yeah.
So you had that whole personal vendetta, and then leads up to the 1881 gunfight.
Yeah.
So I think it's so nuanced there that people don't really realize that these characters were so interconnected politically, had personal agendas together, and then they ended up in a shootout over it.
Yep.
So I think that's neat though. But yeah, the Tombstone the movie is a good movie. I would say so, and I'll just say it. Let's just do some comparison here. Who do you think plays the best Wyatt Earp in Western cinema?
Well, I'm probably, just because I'm a fan anyway and a fan of that movie, I'm probably partial to Kurt Russell. And I don't know that he actually is the best Wyatt Earp, but he's the one I enjoy the most.
I'd agree with you. That's my take too as well. Deja Vu says, and we're getting a lot of questions from Deja Vu tonight. If you could inherit any Old West firearm that you don't currently have, what would you pick?
I really like the 1860 Henry, but I like it in 45 Colt.
Okay.
Just because that would go well with the firearms that I have and be easy, and I love that cartridge. So, but yeah, I love those rifles, and I don't own one.
Okay. Mine would be an original Henry, in 44 rimfire, but those are $50,000 plus in good condition. So I mean, and they only made 12,000 of those. So good luck to me at some point, but that's what I would say. So, and good luck convincing the wife on that one too.
Right.
So final question for the evening for me: if you could choose one gun from each category, what would it be? Give me your rifle, give me your pistol, and give me your shotgun.
The shotgun, I'm not too much of a shotgun guy anymore. I used to love shotguns just for modern things like skeet and trap and stuff. But the shotgun I love the most, I do own, and it's one that you may not have heard of. The brand is Dahan, but it's originally, it's kind of like the whole Cimarron Uberti thing, where Cimarron doesn't make the guns, like Uberti will make a gun and Cimarron puts their name on it. Huglu makes these shotguns. I don't know if they still do, but Huglu made them in Turkey, and then they would be imported here by a company called Dahan, Dahaan, and I love them. I've heard mixed reviews on them, but I've got one that's a 12 gauge side by side, and that's my favorite shotgun that I've ever shot. I love that thing. For rifle, I'd go with that 1860 Henry, although I'm saying that because we're talking to Guns of the West, Dustin. I would also say an FX Impact Air Rifle is right there neck and neck with that. And as far as a handgun, that's a really, really tough one because I love so many handguns. But I will say this, whatever it is, I probably own it because I can't think of anything I'm like dying to get. So whatever my favorite is, I must have it already. I know for like the modern ones, I'm a big fan of Glock and some other ones, but Glock is my carry gun. If we're going Old West, I'd probably say my favorite is the 1851 Navy London model. Okay. And the reason I say London is because they're more commonly have the all blued steel without the brass. I think the brass looks fine, but I really like them with the color case hardened frame and then all the other metal blued steel.
Okay. Now those are some pretty good choices. For me, it would be your Colt Single Action Army.
Good choice.
The rifle would be a Henry, and then the shotgun would be a hammered double, Colt or replica thereof.
Yeah.
So, that's just my preference. Are there any questions that you have of me before we close out or finish up with the audience this evening?
One that I had, just kind of, how did you get into doing the YouTube stuff?
So it's kind of a long story. I'll try to keep it as short as possible. Basically, I I was a teacher for a
Oh,
while.
okay.
Um, I taught middle school in my town here in Texas. Um, and so I enjoyed teaching. Uh, and like I said, politics aside, um, the teaching aspect of it and dealing with people that were interested in a subject that I talked about appealed to me. So um, at some point, I left the school district for other reasons, and then said I wanted to take the teaching elsewhere. And ironically, one of the students that I had taught brought up the fact about, you could create a YouTube channel and, get a whole bunch of people to watch and, maybe become monetized. And this was from a middle schooler,
Yeah.
mind you, I don't think he had a YouTube channel. He was just kind of saying, well, I could do that instead of go to school kind of thing.
Yeah.
Which great idea. Good luck to anybody who honestly believes that. It takes a lot more work than you think.
Yeah. And a
Um,
lot of time.
yeah, it takes a long time. It's not instantaneous by any means. But I digress. So he kind of inspired me to try it. And I just thought that YouTube was a good platform to do it in because it was free. And you could potentially reach a lot of people. So what I started thinking about was history for sure. Um, but then, because one thing I couldn't talk about in school was firearms. So,
Yeah.
you know, I'm like, I'm interested in firearms, specifically Old West firearms. And I was also in SAS at the time. And I thought, there's probably some people out there that want to know a few things um, about these types of firearms. And so I did a little research. I did find you around that time too. So I've actually had you on my radar for ever since I started.
Oh,
Um, and I think you were probably at the 10,000 mark when I found you. Um, I don't know how long ago that is for you,
I
but
don't know, probably a couple years.
okay, yeah. I mean, you were big, but big in my eyes, but not as big as you are now. Um, so I looked up Santee. I also found him. I found Mike Bellevue. Um, and who else did I find? Hickok 45 was another one. He's If you're on YouTube, you know who he is, and especially if you're into guns.
Yeah.
Um, and I just kind of looked at what everyone did, and Hickok 45 does do some Western stuff.
Hmm.
Not all Western by any means,
Yeah.
but he covers a lot of interesting Old West firearms. Um, and I just got inspired by all you guys and decided to do it, and that with my combination of teaching kind of got me into it.
Awesome.
So yeah, that's how I ended up.
That's cool. Well, I like what you're doing.
Yeah, well, thanks. If you don't mind me asking, when did you find me?
Um, I want to say it was a live stream. I don't think I was involved in it, but I was watching it, and I don't remember where it was. It might have been on Duke Frazier's channel or one of those guys. And then there was another time later that you and I were both on one of those, probably on his channel. And I don't remember how long ago that was. Year or two, maybe. But yeah, I would just see your name kind of in the same circles that I was in comments or on a live stream here or there. And then finally just one day just checked out your channel and then started watching it, like the cowboy action shooting and stuff and all that. And I just really liked it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, it's just kind of interesting how we all find each other. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, Santee found me because there was a revolver that he really likes. So that's how I got to know him. As a result, he also suggested certain types of equipment,
Hmm.
and that's where I, I started up in my game when it came to the YouTube, uh, just fine details. And I think he recommended a lighting system for me,
Oh,
and the microphone. So, uh, needless to say, he did help out. So,
yeah.
um,
He's awesome like that. Because his channel is obviously so successful, but he's always trying to lift all the others up along with. It's really cool. I've always loved that about Santee.
Yeah. No, I did 3 videos. I've done 3 videos with him. So, one of them, the first video I did was the shotgun, the Old West shotgun. So if you go back and look at that on his channel, I'm in it, in which I talk about the Old West 97. I did one on the Spencer because I had one and he wanted to cover it. I actually traveled to Arizona to go see him. I was on a family trip when we did that. So,
I remember that one.
Yeah, that was pretty funny. And then obviously I had him on a live stream not too long ago. So we sat and talked for a couple hours like you and I are now. But funny note was I know that he takes recommendations from his audience, and that's one of the things that he does is he always posts, "Hey, you've got mail." It cracks me up when you see that bag drop. It's
me too.
A deadpan delivery.
It never gets old. It's hilarious.
And it never ever gets old. Right. But and so he takes questions from his audience. But the thing that I always wanted to ask him and never saw him do was, and I just thought it would be kind of funny, was I recommended to him, how about he does something on insults in the Old West, and it took him 2 years, but he finally answered. And so, I was actually not doing YouTube for a little while. So, but we kept in touch and I had recommended like 2 years ago, like back in 2018, that he do a video on insults of the Old West. And one time he got back to me and he asked me how I was doing. I'm like, fine, but I'd be better if you actually did my recommendation video, and he's like, well, what are you talking about? Like, what video? And I said, my insults of the Old West that I recommended to you 2 years ago. And he said, oh, well, yeah, I'll get right on that, And next week he published the video. So
oh wow.
That was pretty funny. But yeah, that's a good episode. He does a lot of good stuff on that one, and definitely hits the nail on the head.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, do you have any final questions before we close out?
I don't think so.
Okay. I don't see anything else from the audience tonight, but Dustin, I wanted to say thank you so much for doing this collaboration.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
What's that?
Oh, you're welcome, and thank you.
Yeah. No, thank you. These interviews were kind of reached out to, I don't want to say at random, but I kind of had high hopes, if you will, that people would actually want to do it. So the fact that you even wanted to do it was awesome. So thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure. I think these are fun.
Yeah, and and we should definitely probably get together at some point or do something like this again.
Yeah, definitely. I'd love that.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to say goodnight to the audience. So everybody, thank you for tuning in. I hope you had fun at the show. Stay tuned for another week. And you can always follow Dustin in the description below. I have a link to his channel directly. And Dustin, is there anything you'd like to say to the audience to say goodnight?
Just thanks very much for watching. As always, I really appreciate it.
Yep. All right, everybody. You have a good night. See you later.